The first item on the agenda is the evacuation procedure. For those who don't know, the nearest, if there is an event, we're not expecting anything, but if there is, the nearest safest exit is likely to be that door at the back of this room. If for whatever reason we can't use that, then we should leave the building by the Civic Street entrance, which is the door you all entered by. If there is an event, please go to Assembly Point G in the car park just out there and stay there until tonight's proper officer says it's safe to arrive. We have apologies from Councillor Fowler with a substitute of Councillor Davey, Councillor Jennings with a substitute of Councillor Wright, Councillor Phillips, Councillor Waffles and Councillor Gilmont. Are you happy to note those apologies? Yes. Thank you. Members, do you have any disclosable pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests? No. We now have the minutes of the board held on the 13th April, 20th April and 30th April. Some of which might have already been to full council, but I can't remember. Are you happy to sign with a true and accurate record?
Yes, very interesting.
Thank you very much. The planning applications to be determined tonight, the first one of which is number 36 Keys Hill, Badley Enza, application number 547. Lee Faulkner was indicated by the speaker. Mr. Faulkner, if you take the speaker's turn whilst Mr. Collinson introduces his report. Thank you. Mr. Collinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, this application seeks full planning permission for the change of use of a semi-detached dwelling from a class 3 use to a small children's residential care home, which is class C2. Along with this, there will be a single storey side extension and a rear extension. The side extensions and rear extensions are shown in red in front of you. As you can see, there'll be extensions to the front of the property and to the rear of the property. There's an existing single storey extension to the rear. So as you can see it's an extension to that. I can see from the photo here, this shows the adjacent residential property that's attached to it. That's here without the extension, and this is the application site here. I'll do an extension further along the boundary here this way. Just going back up, so you can see there where the red indicates that there's going to be an increase along the boundary next to that property. In terms of the principle of the development, the agenda indicates that the site is within a defined settlement boundary of Badley Enza, and that's a category 3 settlement, and that's usually where development is acceptable in principle, subject to other considerations. In terms of residential amenity, I think that's a key issue. There's been a significant number of objections received, primarily relating to noise and disturbance and increased activity. As you'll see from the agenda, Environmental Health have raised no objections, advising that the impacts would be comparable to a typical family home. The assessment concludes that there's no substantive evidence that the use would result in materially greater harm than the existing residential use. In terms of highways and parking, let's see if I can get, I'll try and get a plan showing where the parking's showing. So the parking would be to the front of the property. The adjacent property here is a chip shop, and the parking would be provided within the curtilage of the property at the front. The Highway Authority have not raised any objections and confirmed that sufficient on-site parking can be provided. and that traffic movements would be similar to a normal dwelling. In terms of character and appearance of the area, the proposed extensions and frontage alterations would introduce some change, but these are modest and comparable to other permitted development fallbacks and wouldn't harm the street scene. In terms of community impacts, concerns have been raised regarding the background of occupant operational matters which have been raised. However, these are not considered to be material planning considerations and can be dealt with through planning conditions as set out on the agenda. So there's a number of conditions on the agenda in terms of a management plan, number of occupants, etc., which will reduce the impact on the neighbouring properties. In terms of the balance of the application, the proposal retains the residential character and would operate at a scale comparable to a family dwelling, and there are no technical objections from statutory consultees. The impacts identified are either limited or can be appropriately controlled through planning conditions, and therefore the recommendation is approve the application subject to the conditions as set out on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Collinson. Mr. Faulkner, welcome to the council. My colleague will explain the rules on public engagement.
Good evening. You've got 3 minutes to speak. I'll remind you at the 2-minute marker that you've got 1 minute outstanding, and I'll start the clock when you start speaking.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Lee Faulkner, the owner of 34 Keys-Hill, the attached property to the application. With several ongoing applications for children's care homes in North Warwickshire and a quote from Environmental Protection Officer Matt Hartford, his response for an application in Dordon. Most developments of this type could be accommodated with any adverse impact. However, he's experienced a small number of care homes where the behaviour of the children has led to very significant noise and antisocial behaviour, which criminal law is poorly equipped to resolve. How can you guarantee when you'll be housing children with emotional behaviour disorder that there will be no significant noise impact on us and our neighbours of this quiet, peaceful village? When on the NHS website, 2 of the common characteristics of children with EBD are physical and verbal aggression. Moving on. This application is continually likened to a family dwelling, but with up to 8 residents and up to 3 children with EBD, and being operated 24/7, and with the residents having no connection to each other, how could this be a typical family home? The rear extension is up to 4 metres high and has a 4 metre long running along the boundary line. We've not received any answer in relation to the 45-degree rule due to the extension being in close proximity to 34 Keys-Hill's kitchen window. This large extension could make the kitchen very dark, as it will also have a pitch roof, not a flat roof. The property is a small 3-bedroom semi-detached house at the moment, which will need to be renovated and extended to suit the applicant's need, which will have a great effect on our property with noise and disruption while this work is being carried out. I'm moving on to the other conditions that are being put in place for 7 and 8. Reading through, how will these be policed once application has been granted? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Particularly well done on time. Members, do you have any questions for Mr. Faulkner?
Oh, no. Sorry.
No?
Eager to speak to the applicant.
Mr. Collinson, there's a question there on conditions 7 and 8 on the 45-degree rule. Would you like to respond before we move on?
Yeah, condition 7 and 8. So these are conditions that could be enforced through breach of conditions if they're not. Certainly, condition 7 relates to the number of the age of the children within the property. If the young adults reach the age of 18 or over, then we would have to consider a breach of conditions notice if they're above that age. In terms of condition 8, this requires them to the applicant, if it's approved, to submit a management plan. as you can see, the last point on there, that's for engagement and liaison with local residents, to try and resolve any issues up front, really, and a complaints procedure for that. It is a condition we've used previously, and it's worked quite well in terms of ensuring that the use doesn't impact on the residential properties around it. In terms of impact on the neighbouring property, just bear with me. 45-degree rule. So at paragraph 8.6 on the agenda, it indicates what could be potentially done under permitted development, that a property could have a 3 metre extension. Obviously, this is 4 metres. It indicates that although it is a further metre longer, the fallback of 3 metres is a material consideration. It would be difficult to refuse an application at 4 metres on the adjacent property. I did indicate and show the neighbouring kitchen window and the extent of the 3 metre extension that's already there. Officers do not consider that a further metre would have a detrimental impact on that neighbour.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Faulkner. Please stay near the rest of the conversation.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mr. Kieran Poulter. Mr. Poulter, you're joining us on Teams. Again, welcome to the Council House. Welcome to our meeting. My colleague will explain the rules on public engagement.
Good evening. You've got 3 minutes to speak. I'll remind you at the 2-minute marker that you've got 1 minute remaining. I'll start the clock when you start speaking.
Thank you. I'm speaking on behalf of Memory and Garney, who is looking to open this service as a children's residential service, and I've worked extensively within children's residential, certainly those within EBD and learning disability environments. And one of the core aspects of our application is that, you know, we argue that it doesn't break the mold of a familial home, and that, yes, we can consider noise complaints and extra visitors to be disruptful. But let me ask you this question is, you know, if a family of 5 moved into this house without any amendments, which it could well, you know, consider for the house, you are not to know that someone renting this property or purchasing this property has any additional needs that comes with them. Most family households do have children with additional needs nowadays, whether that be an unassigned learning disability or a emotional behavioural disorder, or in fact autism, which isn't categorised under either of those 2 sections. It is really common in practice that we come across families with those people in those households. You know, houses are built strong and sturdy. Certainly this house is as well. And with a dedicated staffing team, you know, I've seen myself in my own businesses and other businesses that I've worked in, that these children can have some really impactful lives in communities like this, when actually we can work with residents to get on board. You know, I've seen children who are perhaps 3-to-1 and 4-to-1 care staff in the community join knitting and crochet groups, be reduced to 1-to-1, enter mainstream schools. And these types of environments can have a long-lasting impact on their lives. And I'm just asking residents, you know, to consider that. You know, we can absolutely have things in place to make sure that, you know, you are comfortable with what we are trying to do.
1 minute
But
remaining.
children in these residential services need that opportunity. In regards to I've lost my train of thought there. In regards to, you know, Ofsted being over the age of 18, we start transition planning at the age of 14 and a half with adult services, and most of the time they are transitioned well before that period. There is the odd occasion where they do, perhaps not find a placement as quick as they would like, but we are working 24/7 to be able to provide that environment for them. We just ask that you enable us to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Members, do you have any questions for our speaker? Councillor
Thank you. My biggest concern is the area where the house is situated, next to a chip shop and a barber's and a village hall. The road is narrow on a hill. The property has enough space, I would say, for 2 cars. If you've got 8 residents in there and the 3 children have got 1-to-1 carers on a shift pattern, you're going to have approximately 6 or even 7 cars needing to park outside the property at any one time. With the difficulties with the parking on the King's Hill at the moment, how are you going to manage that without disrupting the neighbours?
So I think it's important to know that, planning applications of this kind are often put in at worst case scenario. In my experience, planning for up to 3 children is exactly that. It's up to 3 children. Most likely it will be 2, because the eventuality that we get, 3 in there that, can all live together and still thrive in the same environment, that's hard in itself to do. The same with any 3 children as strangers to each other. The chance that they'll need up to 8 staff at all times, again, absolutely depends on the children as well. I think the likelihood is in realistic terms that we're probably looking at 2 children, potentially 3 at most, over an 18-month to 2-year period from opening, with staffing as 1-to-1 and a manager that is there to obviously run the home. And in the manager's absence, the deputy manager is. There might be visitors on occasion, social workers, occupational therapists, speech and language therapists, or learning disability nurses. But they visit the home the same way that any normal family would have visitors around. So that doesn't disrupt in the same way possible. So, talking about 8+ people on a daily basis is quite unlikely. And I think when we look at the operational view of how a home is run, it's more than likely half of that. And if we look at social care as a whole, I would be interested to see the facts and figures of the amount of people that work as support workers for children's residential care that all have driving licenses, given the type of work that they do. And I would, hazard a guess that some of those would use public transport as well. So I think, yes, we don't know for sure. We can't know for sure. But that's what we're there to manage. And that's what we're there to, sort of provide as a matching scheme with the young people that we bring in, the staff that we match up to that as well, and sort of being conscious of the neighbours. This isn't a case of we're going to run this as a children's home and you will like it and lump it. We would like neighbours to be involved. You will get integration from the management and the staff. And certainly in my experience, they've been quite heavily involved. One children's home I'm involved with at the moment, they're a young person, and the neighbour whose young person has autism, they play out together. They go to the park together, they get to integrate as any normal child would in the community. And there's no impact really. And I think it's just about having an open lens view on how that can be done.
My question was, if you've got 3 children, each with 1 worker, and a changeover in staff for a shift pattern, you're going to have, within a village with very poor public transport, you can't walk there. You'd be hard pushed to get a bus on a regular basis on the hours of the shift change. So you're going to have at least 6, if not 7 cars outside that property at one point. How are you going to manage that?
Well, I think we'll have to put in an appropriate policy in place, won't we, to say to, people to be mindful of the area. I think there's not really, a consideration that we can have to say we absolutely won't ask them to park, where there needs to be. Do we ask the people visiting the chip shop on Good Friday not to park outside someone's houses or to be mindful of the residents? Absolutely not, because it's the accepted thing to do. We can ask absolutely the staff on changeover or anyone attending the home to be mindful of neighbouring residents, of course we would in any case. But that's certainly not a promise that I can give, and we can just try and work together to find a middle ground on how we can manage that.
Any other questions, members? Just one from me, Mr. Porter. I'm a little bit unclear if you'll be working at this property or in association with this property, or are you consulting for the applicant?
I won't be working at the property now, so I'll be consulting with the applicant in terms of how the service, the children's home, is run operationally, and supporting her with oversight on the management of the day-to-day runnings of the children's home. So there on a day-to-day basis, I won't be, but I certainly will have an impact on decisions that are made from an operational standpoint.
And as there are no more questions, thank you very much, Mr. Porter.
Thank you.
Members, who'd like to speak first?
Thank you, Chair. I will speak from a little experience. At the end of my garden is a group homes facility in Polesworth, and about 42 years ago, it's quite a large facility. There was some consternation when that became a facility for adults with learning difficulties and physical disabilities and the like. And I have to say that in those 42 years, there has not been a single problem. And indeed, group homes who run that establishment have spread throughout Polesworth with a number of properties, some of which are semi-detached properties. And again, you know, they don't appear to me in any sense at all to experience problems. The people who are cared for in these homes attend local craft clubs, actually quite a feature of the place now, and integrate very well and bring something to the community. Also, as an ex-teacher, I do know that children need stable homes and children need stable care. And sometimes when that isn't able to be provided by the family, they need others to step in. So I fully understand that this is a big leap in the dark for the immediate residents there. But given my experience, I will have to support this application. Thank you.
Councillor Hayfield.
Thank you, Chair. During my time as a Forlongley councillor, there were 3 applications for homes such as this in Forlongley. There was one on the Nuneaton Road, one on the Coventry Road, and one on Shoreby Lane. And each created a lot of excitement when they were first put forward. The Coventry Road one led to one of the most rowdy public meetings I've ever tried to chair. It wasn't a pleasant experience. But like Councillor Parsons says, there were no complaints following that. But all the excitement and everything else, there weren't any problems. However, in those cases, they were detached houses in their own grounds. And there was surrounding space for any noise and bits and pieces. I have a concern here about the location. Having listened to the applicants and things, I've got a concern about scenario modelling in terms of parking. I didn't find the arguments I was hearing particularly convincing. And I think if I was in the adjoining semi-detached property, I would be concerned about noise, because my experience in the past of living in semi-detached properties is you can hear pretty well if there's a domestic going on next door, you can pretty well quote it back to them the next morning. You can hear it. So the principle of this I'm okay with, but the specific application I'm uncomfortable with at the moment, particularly with the amount of information we've got. I don't find it a particularly convincing case for the location it's been proposed in.
I have to say, Councillor Mayfield, I share your concern. I think looking at section 8.7 of the report, it seems to me that we've been talking to our colleagues in the environmental health team. And it doesn't seem particular or specific to me, and certainly following receipt of the third party representation, we've had no further consultation response for environmental health. I'd very much like to see those and to understand how this would work in practice before we get to that point. Mr. Coniston, just to clarify, I can't remember an application for a use such as this in North Warwickshire in a semi-detached as opposed to a detached property. Are you aware of any that have been in semi-detached properties?
I'm not aware of children's homes being in semi-detached properties, but certainly there have been elderly persons care homes in semi-detached properties, as Councillor Parsons indicates. It's certainly the report indicates that it's no different to a family property.
Section 8.16 says, in considering these matters against policy LP29, officers acknowledge that a semi-detached dwelling may not represent the ideal or most respectful form of accommodation for such use when compared to a detached property. I think we need a little bit more information on this, members. Yeah, I share Councillor Hayfield's view. I understand the use and we've had it, but on the specifics of this case, I'd like to hear some more on that. So deferment may be the best way to go. Councillor White?
Yes, myself along the Councillor Dave here representing the views of the many local people who have contacted me and Bernadette with their concerns. Villagers are very concerned with worries about the proposal and the impact it will have on their lives. I attended the informal meeting with the applicant to hear more about what is proposed. At the meeting, I was more concerned, not less. There has been a large number of local objections, 53 in total. Important to recall that this is a semi-detached property. Is this appropriate? I think that most other properties where we have granted consent for this use have been detached houses. On the strength of this, I would like to propose that this application is refused.
Thank you. I saw Councillor Watts, and then we'll come to you, Councillor Burnley.
Thank you. Teacher, speaking as a teacher who has a lot of experience of teaching pupils, children, I think it is important that we try to find places that they can be supported within the communities. And on the surface of it, this seems an ideal. But then when you start looking at the details of it, then I'm not completely comfortable with it. I don't think that the answers that we've had about parking are sufficiently detailed. When we look through this, we seem to be talking about different numbers of staff, different numbers of cars all the way through. We're talking about the possibility of having 5 members of staff. But then in addition to that, we might have another 5 swapping. In addition to that, it could be that we have other health professionals visiting at the same time. I don't think it's realistic to expect to have enough parking spaces for all of those, but I'm not sure that what we are being shown here is giving enough space. Not enough consideration has been given to that, unless I've got it wrong. And I think we need a definite answer, a definitive answer as to what this is going to involve there. There are other aspects of it about the mix of children that we're likely to get and how old they are. Because I have concerns about saying that this is only for children up to 18, when the sorts of children that we're talking about actually have a right to stay longer than that. 18 is no longer the cut-off point. And I would like to hear a lot more, see in writing a lot more about what provision is going to be made when these young adults by then are getting close to the next stage of their lives. Yes, the transition plans start at 14 and a half, but that doesn't mean that they actually are completed and people move on at that point. It is important that there is more continuity than that. And in all that we've seen here, and in all the answers that we've had in meetings and so on, we haven't had any assurance about that. Speaking from a professional point of view, it does concern me a little bit about how this is going to be staffed. So, and I would support to defer this until we can get proper answers to some of these questions.
Thank you.
Councillor Humphries?
Taylor was indicating.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just going to agree with most of the points that have already been raised. I do think it's really important that we look at this with a level head, really, because obviously children are desperately looking for a stable environment to grow up in, and it right there in the heart of the community is really important because they can get some normality to enjoy life like any other child. But I also have strong concerns about the parking and obviously the road safety where it is. So I would like it to be deferred so we can get a bit more information. So yeah, thank you.
If I could just be allowed to make one other point. I have a friend living in Atherstone who is quite upset at the moment because his neighbours, ordinary family, they've just taken up drumming.
Councillor Humphries, you're not going to start drumming, are you?
No, I was going to take up the trumpet. I'd like to propose to second what Councillor Wright has said. You know, I'm a great believer these children definitely need stability, need the right place to live, and we've got to do our best for them. They're already in a very disadvantaged state, and this type of home is probably the right thing for them, but it's in the wrong place. I've got a family experience of this. I have a niece who in Nottingham, where they moved people in very similar. Her health and well-being was totally ignored. Her and her partner, they become very ill over 3 years as a result of what was going on. And to the extent that the council bought them out and bought the house off of them and doubled the size of what that was there, but actually gave them the chance of having respite and getting away from it. So in my opinion, this is the wrong place to have this, and I would say on amenity. So I would second in the proposal to refuse. Thank you.
Councillor Hayfield?
I'm not sure I'm ready to refuse it. I'm not sure I'm ready to give it permission. I'm with you in terms of deferment. Rare for me to say that. But in terms of scenario modelling, it's important we have some better idea of the sort of needs that are anticipated by the children who might come to this, because special educational needs covers a very broad spectrum. There are some with limited needs, there's some who have quite intensive needs, and that might require lots of staff and bits and pieces. But there's also an issue, not just the possible noise and things to the adjoining property, but to what extent children here will be able to integrate in any way with the community in which they've been plonked. Are they going to be able to head to the chip shop on their own and things and get things, or is that, you know, I don't know. All I know is from my experience in other places that there is a very broad spectrum of need. Some high dependency and presumably lots of money going to them, and some with less dependency and less money going with them. But until I've got a better idea exactly what's planned here, I don't get any sense there's any real firm plans here, other than this will be a good place to try and have a facility like this. I want to be expecting the applicant to come forward with a lot more detail of the nature of the needs that the anticipated children might have here, in terms of what the impact that might have in terms of staff and parking, in terms of noise, in terms of integration. That's missing at the moment. And if there's a deferment, I would hope that we can get more information on that, so we can come to help me, and hope perhaps others come to a view, yes, we'll support this, or no, reluctantly, we can't.
So, members, I've heard, sorry, Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, apologies again from Councillor Watford, who on short notice leading to my attendance here tonight. I've supplied staff into children's residential homes for a large metropolitan borough in the Black Country for a number of years. I also know, therefore, is that when you open up a new home, you get an awful lot of residential concern, some of which is justified, some of which isn't. Just for the very point that Councillor Hayfield was making, is that you have to have a clear idea about the actual client group. I remember there being in a situation that I think that has been described by members to my left, in relation of a home that was home and everyone was up in arms. But I knew darn well, there's actually, you'd never seen any of the children that would go into that particular establishment. You would never know that they were there because of their level of need. It meant that they were never going to be coming outside again. The concern that I've got here is shared from Councillor Humphrey's point of view, is the suitability of the site. The concern that I hear when I know that if you're going to create a proper environment for the children there, is that you need continuity of care, which means that you have to have stable staffing. So actually, staff need to know how they're going to get to and from work and where they're going to park when they're there. And to hear it saying, well, most of them might actually catch the bus, when you don't know, is that those are the kind of things that mean that people can't stay in roles, which means that that care is not continuous, which can lead to problems, which impact on residents. Yeah, and those are the kind of concerns that we've got here. Is that I can't help but feel that to try and find out around why this site was chosen, why a semi-detached is there, why that client group is going to be attached to it, and what that client group is absolutely necessary for our understanding. That would also help alleviate concerns of residents, or whether those concerns are very real and very, very correct to be there. Is that there is a concern, like I say, is that you have the image that it's going to be like some kind of, you know, you're going to have fagging outside and taking these, going out there. That invariably is not going to be the case. But what you can have is client group creep. Is that we are just here saying that we're moving this from this particular usage to another. And once that's done, I presume that this isn't just going to deal with one client group, but it's going to go on in perpetuity. And so what comes out in year one might not be year 2 and year 3 or year 10. And that's where the concern is that we're going to be giving here the potential for that use to change and increase and be different needs over time. So I do think that there is I don't think you've got it doesn't feel right to immediately refuse, because I think that there's a request for more information. Then we can refuse it if it's not suitable. But I feel that we need to understand the journey that this has been on to actually come to this planning application coming in this present form.
So members, having listened to what everyone has said, we have a proposal to refuse consent. I've equally had a lot of members talking about more information, so I'd like to propose that we defer for more information along the lines of the discussion we've had. Is there a second?
Second.
Councillor Wright, are you happy that we take the deferment proposal first, given? Yeah. So members, can I see all those in favour of deferment? And those against? So that's carried, and the item is deferred for more information. I'll come back to a subsequent meeting. We now move on to application 431 for 26 Salisbury Drive, York, Orton. Mr. Roberts has indicated he'd like to speak. Mr. Roberts, if you'd like to take the speaker's chair while Mr. Brown introduces his report. Sorry, Mr. Brown. Mr. Collinson. Mr. Much younger, Mr. Collinson. Mr. Brown. I just, I go into autopilot. I certainly am. Mr. Brown Robinson.
Earlier on today, I circulated a letter from the applicant by email. Do you want me to read that out?
Yes, please.
Yes. So this is from Edwin Waters and Joan Mulvey. Don't know whether I pronounced that right. Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. This application was previously deferred by the board in December following discussion around the height of the pitched roof. During the meeting, Councillor Martin Watson suggested that by way of a compromise, would we consider reducing the height of the existing roof? We listened carefully to those comments and agreed that we would work towards a revised proposal. We are now asking the committee to consider the amended roof pitch of 2.85 metres. This represents a meaningful reduction from the existing structure and demonstrates that we are willing to compromise. We believe that pitched roof remains the most sensible and sustainable solution for several reasons. A pitched roof is more environmentally sustainable over the long term, more durable and weather resistant, more economically practical to maintain and better suited to drainage and longevity. By contrast, the suggested alternative of a rubber gravel membrane roof would be considerably more ongoing maintenance due to a shorter lifespan, leading to more regular repairs and disruption, ultimately less cost effective. We would respectfully ask the committee to consider nearby precedent within the area. Planning permission was granted approximately 5 years ago at 85 Coleshill Road for a bungalow situated to the side of the garden and clearly visible from the road. That approved pitch is around 3.6 metres in height, which is notably higher than our revised proposal of 2.85 metres. Whilst we appreciate every application must be considered on its merits, we believe this demonstrates that higher pitched roofs have previously been considered and passed within the locality. We therefore respectfully ask the committee to support the revised application. Okay, so that's what I forwarded through to you all earlier. Okay, so the application that we've got in front of us was brought in December, as indicated by the letter received. Originally, the roof, as you can see from the plans in front of you, showed the overall roof of this this detached building would be 3.45 metres in height. It had a relatively high pitch to it. I've got photos in the presentation which show the existing, so maybe we can have a look at that before we go to the revised ones. So these were the photographs that were presented at the last board meeting showing the height as it currently stands. From the neighbours, again showing the impact on the neighbours there, and the height. You can see from there the fencing that's adjacent to that, showing what would have been, well, what's visible at the moment, and again showing it there as well. What we asked at the last board meeting was that whether a compromise could be reached, and therefore what's proposed is to reduce it to 2.85 metres. Now, as members will have heard and seen through the agenda, permitted development allows you to go up to 2.5 metres. So a building could be built there up to 2.5 metres in height. This is just another 35 centimetres above that. So what we're assessing is whether that additional 35 centimetres has a detrimental impact on the neighbouring properties. So from the plans, original plans, 3.45 metres. So that's a reduction of, if my math serves me correctly, in GCSE time, is 60 centimetres. So a reduction of 2 feet here. So looking at the plans, looking at the photographs, there's a 2 foot reduction in height there. And there's, in terms of the height, it's just 35 centimetres above what someone could do without requiring planning permission. We as officers, and this is our officers' opinion, obviously it's down to members at the end of the day, because you are the decision makers. We believe there's been a substantial compromise by the applicant here. The adjacent residents have been involved in that. We believe with the amendments that it should be supported, but I'll leave it in your hands.
Thank you very much. Mr. Roberts, welcome to the meeting. My colleague will explain the rules on public engagement.
Good evening. You've got 3 minutes to take to speak. I'll remind you the 2 minute marker that you've got 1 minute outstanding. I'll start the clock when you start speaking.
I am here to represent the views of 6 households. I will not be describing the building as a shed, but that conjures up the image of a small brown wooden thing, mainly intended to house the mower. The building is huge in its footprint and looms over surrounding fences. We find it most annoying that the householder put up this outbuilding without bothering to consult building regulations or seeking planning permission. It was obviously just directed to fill the space across the bottom of the garden. If plans had been submitted at the outset, they would surely have been rejected due to the enormous dimensions. Secondly, the outbuilding is much too high, especially considering how close it is to the building line at the rear of our houses, 10 metres from one neighbour and 12 metres from the other. This may be not such an eyesore if we all had long gardens, but we do not. Those living closest to it find it totally dominates their rear bedroom, kitchen and living room windows. In our opinion, a flat, slightly sloping roof needs to replace it as soon as possible. All the complainants take issue with the visual appearance. It is wholly constructed of orange timber with orange light bulbs along the front, and it is believed that a tiled roof is being planned by the householder. What garden shed ever had a tiled roof? We question fire risk, especially it is very close to the boundary fences. The fire brigade tell us that NWBC is responsible for ascertaining whether the timber is fireproof. Has this been considered and investigated by the planning officer? Would the complainants make a huge compromise at the very start by agreeing that the body of the outbuilding should remain, providing the roof is lowered to meet building regs, i.e. 2.5 metres height? When the planning officer suggested the present proposal, a high pitched roof at 2.85 metres, we did discuss this, but the majority view remained that it was still too high. Had plans been submitted based on this new proposal, it would presumably have been rejected again. Whatever the final decision, we hope that an inspector will come on site to ensure strict compliance.
Thank you very much. Members, have any questions for our speaker? Just one question for me, if I can, just to clarify what you've said and whether I've read. In the report, it says the objector's initial position was the roof should be flat or slightly sloping 2.7 metres at the front, 2.6 at the back. Is that what you'd ideally wish to see?
Well, we suggested that first, but we've gone back to our own decision to 2.5. We would prefer to see it at 2.5.
Thank you very much. In which case, thank you. Now, members, who'd like to start the conversation? Councillor Hayfield?
I can understand neighbours' concern. When they're going to look out of their window, they're going to see something different. And I absolutely understand why they might object to this. But I think, as Mr. Collinson said, the applicants here are so close to something they could do under permitted development rights that this is fairly, the applicants have compromised quite considerably on this in the light of the objections from neighbours and things. And I can't really see any reason to refuse this, so I'm going to propose that the planning permission is granted.
Thank you. Councillor Bell?
Yes, Chairman, I'm quite happy to second that. I think I do understand it can be difficult for the neighbours, but there's been considerable compromise, and I think we should go with this.
Sorry, as local member, do you want to speak now or later? Or?
I'll defer to this there, but the members want to hear
Okay.
first.
You were before me.
Sure. Thank you, Chair. I'm happy. I do understand residents' concerns, obviously, but it is slightly over what the permitted development line is. However, by the looks of it, the developer has looked at it and reduced it substantially. My one concern is with the lighting, because I do think that that is a bit overpowering in an evening when a resident is looking out. But lots of people do have outbuildings, particularly with large households. Myself, we have an outbuilding that is well used by our family, and but I do have concerns about the lighting. But I'm happy to support, really. But I would like to ask if the lighting could be reduced.
Okay, thank you. Councillor David?
Basically, that's what I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
That when you look at those two pictures, the nighttime one really sort of leaps out at you. And if there is some way that you could condition it to have less obtrusive lighting, I think that really does. To me, when it's lit up like that, I would not want that to be there. I think it's very reasonable for residents to say we don't want that. It is big, possibly over big. When it's not lit up, then it's not sort of in your face, as it were. If we were to accept this amendment to the plans and pass it, I think it should come with a condition to make it less intrusive with the lighting.
Thank you. Councillor Bigley?
Thank you, Chair. Just very quickly, a couple of points. I can see both sides of the argument. There doesn't appear to be any overlooking. I can't see there's any windows at the back onto the rear of the premises. It is obviously slightly larger, but again, with previous with the permitted development, it also almost becomes negligible. The only thing I would be concerned about, is if it's just going to be purely a recreational building, then so be it, albeit a very fancy storage for a garden lawnmower. But effectively, I would think that we really do need to be robust about ensuring that it is purely recreational and it doesn't become some sort of residential annex. I think that would cause much more difficulty, I think, for neighbours and the amenities going forward. Thank you.
Councillor Chalmers?
Just on the thunder. I was going to say exactly the same, that it remains as an outbuilding, not as a building that's going to be occupied. We'll also say that looking at the lighting, and I've got lighting around the back of my house, but you look at the neighbouring property, the amount of light bleed over there is negligible. Because I think when you look at lighting, you need to look at the bleed, where it actually goes. And it looks from that photograph, but it is only lighting their own property. As I say, the bleed on the next door neighbours looks to be negligible.
So, members, look, I've listened very much to what everyone is saying. I absolutely understand what the objectives are saying. There is a great difficulty when developments can happen without the benefit. Now, having read the report, the applicant's view is that they thought what they were doing was within the rules, and they turned out that it wasn't within the rules. I really do understand why people get upset and concerned when developments happen without the benefit of consent, because they have effectively lost the opportunity to have their say and for them to be heard. And that's an essential part, I think, also of the planning process. Until government, in their wisdom, changed the law to make it illegal to do that, there's not a great deal we as the planning board can do, aside and go through the process that we are, and listen to both sides and to hear what people say, and try and broker a reasonable compromise. No, inevitably, all these things are what one's man's meat is another man's poison, and it is very difficult. It's very difficult when you've got to look at something you don't like and which you feel has not gone through the process. So I absolutely understand why people are aggrieved. Equally, I think we have to understand the limited scope for what we have to make sustainable planning decisions. I think, Mr. Collison, members have raised fairly sensible and reasonable points about what we can do to control lighting and what the approved use might be. And before I bring Councillor Stewart in, could I have a legal view on, do we need to specify that now, or can we reach a determination subject to an agreement on lighting and unapproved exact approved use? Thanks. Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Chair. When this, first of all, I'd like to thank members for their previous decision to defer and both to come back to give the opportunity for a compromise position to be reached. When Councillor Wapples was sat in this chair, when that meeting was, which I think was December, she made a direct request of the applicant whether they'd be willing to consider a flat roof or slightly sloping roof. And they said yes, that they would, which I think was a sign of great hope for those of us who wanted to have a decision that actually wouldn't be objected to. I'm slightly concerned by the letter, is that the only reason or rationale given for not considering a flat roof or slightly sloping roof seemingly was the cost effectiveness and the danger of repair, which, to be honest, actually doesn't strike me as a you know, I understand why the applicant would prefer that, but I don't understand why it should be, if you're trying to find a compromise that would go through, be something that's dealt with. I think that points that I think residents will be concerned when they read in the report is a seeming desire or feel that you get greater aesthetic utility from a pitched roof. And yes, if you asked us to draw a picture of a roof we'd all draw a triangle as opposed to something that's slightly sloping. But at the same time, is as everyone in the near vicinity would prefer it to be something that is less obtrusive above the fence line. Because I think it's the fence line in many ways that this is the thing, because there was a height that was there, which was, I presume they're 6 foot panels. And this is now going to be sitting 90 centimetres, a further 3 feet, further 50% above that. I think the other concern that I don't think we always take into consideration, as we are getting into lighter nights now, and I'd like to enjoy my garden or whatever, is that it might not impact on the light into the properties, but it can impact on the light at the back of your garden. So in terms of if you want to go and enjoy your garden in the evenings or whatever, you could increasing shade because it is impacted because it is an extra 3 feet above what's there. So I think that it's not the compromise that it's always made out to be. I think that it's the minimum that's being offered that think will get through, as opposed to a genuine effort, which I think will stick in the craw somewhat of local residents who have reverted back to a position of, no, that's where the regs are, let's go for that. Because they did offer 2.7 to 2.6 with a flat roof, which they would have happily accepted, which again, if we're talking about levels of compromise, it's only a further 15 centimetres in terms of what your level of roof is. So both, there doesn't appear to be the will, which was actually given and actually suggested would have come out from the last meeting, that would you consider a flat roof or slightly sloping roof? And the answer was yes. And that doesn't seem to be done. Now, members will make their own decision, but I find that slightly disappointing. And it doesn't help to alleviate any concerns of someone might be trying it on or be seen to be getting away with it, which I think is, is something that people are going to fit in this situation.
I can understand that. I'm not making a comment on this application. I tend to think that at the end of most meetings.
Okay.
Mr. Collins, you wanted to.
Just a couple of points of clarification. Paragraph 711 says about pitched roof is better because of the use of tiles. Hence, that's why it's gone for the pitched roof rather than the flat roof, to harmonise with the area better. In terms of lighting, you'll note at paragraph 7.23, planning shouldn't duplicate other legislation. And if there are issues in terms of lighting, that's covered through a light abatement notice. We could potentially put a note to the applicant in terms of seeing whether they should direct any lighting downwards. So we could put a note on the decision in terms of lighting. I don't think we would be able to put a condition in this instance on this residential householder application on lighting. And finally, in terms of the use, condition 2 deals with the use. If it was to be used as an annex, the wording of condition 2 says about it being incidental to the main dwelling. An annex is, and it comes down to wording, is ancillary. If it was an annex, if it was to be used as an annex, it wouldn't. They'd need to vary that condition. So it does cover it not being used as an annex. I hope that's clear.
Sure. May I ask a question in, should that be breached, what happens in terms of enforcement?
Oh, we have a whole enforcement team.
I know we do, and I make use of them, and they're very effective. But I'm just not sure about how that would work in this particular instance.
Yeah, if we'd received a complaint, we'd have to have a look at it and see whether either they'd need to vary the condition or we'd have a breach of condition against them, which would lead to magistrates' court if necessary. The reason for the condition is avoidance of doubt and to ensure that it doesn't have an impact on the adjacent residents, so we need to do that as well. So yeah, there's no right of appeal with a breach of condition, so yeah.
So can I just take a bit of legal guidance on what exactly does building hereby approved shall only be used as incidental to the main dwelling?
So
But does that involve, for example, application?
Potentially.
So I think I'd like to understand how we can tidy that up, because application, I understand it is for storage and kennel and stuff like that. And you know, insofar as we're able to, I just might be content to say that.
if necessary, it could say that. As I've mentioned, ancillary as an annex is different to incidental. It does come down to interpretation, but there is case law on that. But we can look at the wording of condition 2 to make it more robust.
I think that would be greater comfort. Members, you've heard the conversation, and I think quite rightly from the objectors as well as from the applicant. Does anybody have any other questions or comments? I have a proposal that the application is granted. Councillors Hayfield and Bell, are you happy with the variations we just discussed with Mr. Collinson? So, members, you have a slightly amended proposal. Can I see all those in favour of granting consent? And any against? So consent being granted. Thank you. Members, we now move to application number 415 for the butcher shop inside Amston Lane, Arley. Mr. Sadiq is joining us on Teams. Mr. Sadiq, welcome to the meeting. My colleague will explain the rules on public engagement.
Good evening. You've got 3 minutes to speak. I'll start the clock when you start speaking. I'll give you a reminder at 2 minutes that 1 minute's remaining.
Good evening, Chair and councillors. Thank you for allowing us to speak this evening on behalf of the client. From the previous meeting that we had, some of the councillors were concerned about the setting back the existing 3 properties from the road. So what we have done in a coordination with the planning officer is that we've put the buildings back by 1 metre, allowing landscaped areas to the front of the property, which has reduced the impact on the visual aspect of the buildings themselves. We've addressed all the concerns that we feel that was raised in the previous meeting by some of the councillors. We see no reason for this application to be concluded today and allow my client to build this much needed residential scheme that would not only provide family homes, but also local jobs and regeneration. If there's any questions or any queries that anybody would like me to answer, I'm here and we'll welcome them. Thank you.
Good timing, Mr. Sadiq. Thank you very much. Members, do you have any questions for our speaker? There are no questions, Mr. Sadiq. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Members, any comments, proposals? Councillor Hayfield?
Again, I think there's been, there were concerns raised before about the proximity of the houses at the front to the pathway and things, overcrowding and things. Then that's entirely gone away, but it's been ameliorated by changes to the plan. And I'm still keen to support this, I think, because I think this is an acceptable use for a site that is, well, back to the days of Rowley's and things. I was quite happy with the butchers there. Used to do really great meat pies there, steak pies from Rowley's. They were always a treat. But that's gone away. This seems to me to be an acceptable amendment to the original plans, and I'm happy to move the recommendation the permission be granted.
Thank you. Councillor Jackson?
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Whilst I recognise that the developer has made significant changes to the through the frontage, I do have concerns that still remain, primarily primarily around the highway and safety issues. In particular, I remain concerned about the refuge vehicles still having to reverse in what is already a constrained access arrangement, especially given the existing parking on the narrow nature of the lane. I'm also not convinced that the bin storage area is going to be sufficient enough for the number of properties, which will obviously create further obstruction and usability issues. Finally, I do believe that there has been adequate reassurance regarding emergency vehicle access, particularly for the rear properties. But whilst I support the principle of redeveloping the site for housing, I do feel that my concerns have not been satisfactorily resolved, and therefore I cannot support the application in its current form. But I do understand that the developer has looked and tried to move the houses back slightly. Thank you.
So I've got Councillor Parsons and Councillor Derwicks, but if you don't mind, just before, Mr. Thompson, the description is an outline application, so are there, it specifically says landscaping reserved. How much of this is a full application? How much of this is what we're going to consent for?
80%. So you've usually got 5 reserved matters. So everything apart from landscaping is being considered. So it's 80%.
So the issues that Councillor Jackson's referring to are the final proposal.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think it was Councillor Parsons and then it's Councillor Durst.
Thank you, Chair. Having visited the site, I'm convinced that this development is a significant improvement to the site. I appreciate the move back of 1 metre. It doesn't solve all the problems, but I still think this is a reasonable estate that's being produced here, a significant improvement to the site as it is, and I would like to second Councillor Hayfield's proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Derrick.
Yeah, I'd just like to repeat what I said last time, really, that this is a vast improvement on what is there already. I still have concerns, the same thing concerns as Councillor Jackson about movement of vehicles around the site and so on. But I am pleased to see, as I suggested at the last meeting, that they looked at it again and they have acted on that and moved the building line back. Yes, it would be great if it was a bit further back, but I understand the reasons for not doing that. I can be happy to support this application.
Thank you. Any other comments, members? In which case, it's been proposed and seconded that consent be granted. Can I see those in favour of consent? And those again. Thank you very much. That's carried and consented. Right. Members, we now move on to application 179 for land northwest of Marston Lewis Shopping Station. Mr. Pudding has indicated he'd like to speak, so Mr. Pudding, please take the speaking chair while Mr. Collinson introduces his.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members will see that this application seeks planning permission for 50 megawatts battery energy storage system, or we use the acronym BESS, on a 2.15 hectare agricultural site within Greenbelt. It's approximately 600 metres north of Marsden. The development comprises of 32 battery containers, or containers in this area here, substation, associated infrastructure, access improvements on Bodymore Heath Lane. It includes drainage to the frontage of the site near the lane, and landscaping. The proposal is a temporary development, as we say, with energy development for 40 years, and would connect to the grid via nearby 132 kilovolts overhead line. The key principles here that we need to consider is green belt, and the starting point is that the site lies within green belt. In terms of an assessment against the NPPF and grey belt definition, it is considered that the site itself would be defined as grey belt. It is also considered that it would judge not to be inappropriate development. Therefore, there's no green belt reason for refusal. Therefore, the application should be assessed on the other planning merits, balancing other harms and benefits. In terms of the main impacts, there is a landscape and visual impact. I have plans showing, we just come to it, showing what the scheme would look like in the countryside. Here it shows the high fencing of 4 meters and then landscaping around the outside. And again here, pictured from Bodymore Heath Lane, again landscaping and some of the fencing next to it. This is at year 15, is taken from the landscape and visual impact assessment. As you'll see from the agenda, there are noise impacts were identified as part of the scheme. But mitigation in terms of acoustic fencing and attenuated equipment reduces the effect to an acceptable level. Environmental health raises no objection to this point. In terms of highways and access, the Highway Authority raises no objection. As members will have seen, the access point is on Bodymore Heath Lane. Construction may be difficult and may generate more traffic, but actually maintenance of it, once it's built, there'll be negligible highway impact. In terms of flooding and drainage, the site is largely flood zone 1. With a sustainable drainage strategy, it ensures that there'll be no increase in off-site flooding. In terms of ecology, the proposal delivers 15% biodiversity net gain through planting and habitat enhancements. As you can see with the scheme, there's quite a substantial landscaping buffer as well, and that incorporates the biodiversity improvements as well. In terms of agricultural land, there will be some loss of best, most versatile land, but that's limited in scale and for a temporary period of time. In terms of fire safety, a fire safety strategy has been prepared, and Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Services raises no objection. That carries significant weight in terms of their no objection to the scheme. Members will have seen there have been 15 objections received, raising concerns about greenbelt impact, landscape harm, noise, traffic, fire risk, and cumulative effects. As you'll have seen, these have been carefully assessed with technical consultees, raising no objections. We do need to consider the benefits of the proposal, and there are substantial benefits in terms of national policy supporting renewable energy, which is a key national benefit. Their contributions in terms of climate change, supporting integration with new renewable energy, and a confirmed grid connection. In terms of the planning balance, there are harms. There are harms principally in terms of landscape impact and temporary loss of agricultural land, but in the planning balance, these are considered to be limited in extent. These are outweighed by the significant benefits of renewable energy infrastructure, with the national policy directing that substantial weight should be given to those. And therefore, the recommendation is one of approval, subject to conditions as set out on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pudding, welcome to the meeting, particularly having waited so long to get this one. It may be a surprise to you, but my colleague will now explain the rules on public engagement.
Good evening. You've got 3 minutes to speak. I'll remind you at the 2-minute marker that you've got 1 minute remaining, and I'll start the clock when you start speaking.
Good evening, councillors. Thank you for this opportunity to address the committee and speak in support of this application. I'm here today seeking permission for the proposed battery energy storage system. You'll already be aware of the need for energy storage and the benefits of this, including but not limited to enhancing the grid reliability, reducing the reliance on fossil fuels, and offering economic benefits to rural communities, especially crucial during the ongoing energy crisis. Moreover, developments play a vital role in mitigating climate change by supporting transition to renewable energy. Our temporary scheme will be decommissioned in 40 years, allowing the land to return to agricultural use with enhanced biodiversity and soil regeneration. Both North Warwickshire Borough Council and the national government have declared climate emergencies and have set requirements to meet targets to net zero carbon. This proposed development is one project that is required to achieving this ambitious but necessary target. We recognise concerns raised by the council, particularly regarding noise, visual impact and fire risk. However, I assure you that our technical specialists have thoroughly prepared reports outlining the merits of this development and propose robust mitigations to address these issues. While BESS could be considered as an inappropriate development in the Greenbelt, we believe there are very special circumstances to justify this project, including those already mentioned and previous decisions by yourselves as the local planning authority, who have since concluded that BESS in the Greenbelt is acceptable. It's essential to recognise that this site, despite being in the Greenbelt, is otherwise largely unconstrained, with no significant concerns regarding to flooding, heritage, ecology or transport. Additionally, it's located away from Grade 1 agricultural land. Whilst there have been concerns raised about the scheme's noise level, it is crucial to note that mitigation measures such as attenuators and acoustic fencing have been included in the design. We have therefore demonstrated that the noise levels for local residents will comfortably meet internal amenity standards to go to day and night. Additionally, the concerns regarding the impact on the openness of the Greenbelt have been thoroughly addressed by our landscape consultants. Our scheme includes extensive landscape planting, supporting in photo montages to minimise visual impact and ensure sufficient screening. Moreover, the site's limited access and existing vegetation further mitigate against any potential harm to the Greenbelt. This application is supported by a comprehensive suite of technical documents which demonstrate that the scheme is acceptable, policy compliant and capable of addressing all identified concerns through appropriate mitigation measures. In conclusion, our proposed development aligns with planning policy and offers substantial benefits to the environment in supporting renewable energy. I respectfully ask the committee to approve this application. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you very much indeed. Members, any questions last week? Councillor Ridley first.
Hello, thank you for that. You spoke about benefits to local residents. They get free electricity.
They're not. They're not. It's more a case of on a broader spectrum. So, contribution to transition to a low carbon future, but there's no specific benefit to the locals. It's on a broader scale.
So effectively, it's not necessarily local residents. It's the wider community.
Everyone as a whole, correct?
So they have to take the hard pain to their openness, but there's nothing directly beneficial to them. Is what I was just saying.
Nothing directly beneficial like that, yeah, but we've taken measures for, as I mentioned, to mitigate against any visual impact, highways as well with transport, etc. We've got this. Obviously, I won't go through all of the list of different documents where we're reducing that impact on locals on their day-to-day life. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ridley, you stole one of my items because I'll tell you one thing North Warwickshire residents are frustrated with. HS2, we keep hearing about the greater good and there's nothing for the locals, absolutely zero benefit. So if there was some even discounted electricity, people might have a slightly different view on this. But I just want to pick up on a couple of points. It's interesting that you mention the flood, and Mr. Collinson goes back to one of his photos. You'll see how boggy that land is down on that corner, and it floods regularly on Bodymoor Eve Lane on that corner. So you can just see it there. So when we talk about it not flooding, that they are very wet fields. And just while I'm talking about fields, you say about grade 1 and loss of that. This field, I mean, I don't know how long this field's been farmed for. Decades, possibly even longer. So when we talk about that, when we talk about the loss of the actual farming land, you know, there is a concern in the country around loss of actually, you know, food security, and we keep taking away farming land that is currently farmed. You know, we had a site visit to there, and there was the crops in the field. So that was one of the concerns I had around that. So I wonder what your view will be on when you say about that, and it will be returned. Previous developed land is never returned to its previous state, despite all the assurances we have. And one of my pets, and apologies for other members, I will bring us to fire, because it's an interesting one. You say there's a fire strategy. I'm curious about this fire strategy, because every fire and rescue service in this country accepts that you cannot extinguish lithium-ion fires. So you can manage it, which is why they always ask for a large water supply close by. And generally, most of the risk is actually during construction rather than actually when it's running. So when we talk about what the fire strategy is, I'd be curious to know what your plans are if this was to be approved during that construction phase. And I guess finally, two ones, very interested to see the landscaping, and developers are very good at doing it. This is what it will look like in 15 years' time. Well, year 1, year 2, year 3 is going to look pretty damn ugly in that area, because it is in a very open field. So it seems we had the debate about a 2.8 metre, I won't call it a shed, but outbuilding, and we're talking about 4 metre high fencing here. So we're talking about, you know, things that are again significantly high. And my final one is, when will it actually be connected to the grid? Because we often see a lot of these things that are actually desperate for. We need the renewable energy in the country, and it's not actually going to be connected to the grid for years. So lots there, apologies, but
Yeah, no worries at all. I'll start with your first point. Correct me if there's anything I missed within those points. Obviously, with regards to the flood risk, we've done a flood risk assessment. We've had experts that, obviously not myself, factor that in to ensure that if there is any flooding risk, us as developers wouldn't look at that sort of location. So it's not enough to warrant any dismissal of the project from our point of view as a developer. Obviously, with regards to the 40-year lease of the project, yes, it will be used for 40 years, and then at the end of that, there are fallow years where it's not being used. So obviously our commitment is to return it to that land. But as you say, with the difficulty with reducing farming land nationally, we obviously all know the issues with that. But I think we're looking at the wider issue of climate change and the fact that if we don't start creating these projects sooner rather than later, there are going to be other external factors that will reduce the beneficial side of farming itself. Obviously, I'm not an expert on that, but that's the kind of stance we're looking for. But yeah, with regards to fire risk, yeah, we've got a whole safety plan on that and how we're going to factor that in. I've got a whole list of different things that we can do. Each container has automatic detection and alarm systems for heat and smoke. It's activated automatically by heat and smoke detection in each cabinet. They can be isolated and shut down remotely. They're also designed within each container for a 60-minute fire resistance. And then obviously, in which case a sounder will begin for an emergency. And then that'll be sent off to an off-site monitoring facility who will call the fire service, who we have made aware of, obviously, all the plans that we have submitted. And their obviously approval with what we're doing, subject to obviously various conditions. And then obviously with the exit from within the plan, that would be 3 minutes, 3 meters from any container, in which case access can be in and out without issue. And then the equipment itself will be subject to a control burn. So as you say, the fire service won't necessarily be fighting that. They are designed for a control burn. So the fire service will be there with any onboard water cell sleeve to reduce the temperature of surrounding equipment and dampen nearby vegetation. So this equipment is controlled to be for a control burn. So then that will be the way of mitigating, managing such issues. Yeah.
Okay, if I could just, yeah, and there was another one about when is it actually going to be connected? When is this going to be doing the greater good?
Yeah, no, of course. So as of
sorry,
yet,
if I could just come back on the fire one.
Yeah.
I understand that once it's in place, once you've got the detection, the smoke, etc., and about suppression while you're in, but most BES fires happen during construction. And my worry is that actually none of that's in place during the construction when it's actually at high risk.
Yeah, I personally don't know when the plan is in place. I believe it will be from once it's constructed, but in the meantime, we have various safety measures that our EPC team will follow to make sure that they know exactly what they're doing. But I can't provide any information on what during construction.
Right. And when will it be connected to the grid?
We have no formal grid connection on this one as of yet. We've applied, but we do not have a gate 2 connection from NESO. So we're progressing with planning. Obviously, we've committed time and investment within this application. So we're just progressing with planning with the hope to request a gate 2 connection in Q3 for this year.
Okay.
But that can be subject to multiple changes, obviously, with performance.
Yeah, because we've seen others. Sorry, Chair, because we've seen other applications for solar farms and such like and battery storage, where the actual connection to the grid is not for 10, 15 years.
Yeah, the whole list of connections going into the grid, so it's a very difficult process to kind of factor that in. But yeah, we have no formal grid connection just yet, but that's something we're working on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, ma'am? Just sorry. Councillor.
Megawatts. Compared with some of the other BES applications that we've had, this is quite a small one. It's a relatively small site. The actual area that you are saying that you're going to put these in is actually very small. The groundworks that you're saying that you're going to be putting in here are much, much greater than that. And I would like to know what assurance we can have that you're not going to come back later on and double the size of this, because the groundworks would indicate that you've got that in mind already.
Yep. So this application is for this size battery scheme. Hypothetically, if we were to have another scheme next door, then that would be a whole separate application for review from yourselves. Everything in that red line boundary and our proposed grid connection is 50 megawatts. It won't be more.
If I could clarify that,
yeah,
I'm not talking about a site next to it.
Yeah,
I'm talking about the space that you've already got on there. You know, the 32 units that you're putting in there. I think there are only 24 of them that are actually batteries. Take up less than half of the groundworks that you're putting in there. You could quite easily double that number without doing any further groundworks. That is what I wanted assurance of, that you will not be coming back, can't come back and ask for extra units to go on the same site.
Yeah, there will be no extra units to that. We've used that space for landscaping and mitigation measures to ensure that we follow mitigation measures with all these different teams to ensure.
So that includes the access road?
Correct.
Because the access road actually gives you a lot more space.
Correct. It will be a 50 megawatt scheme. We've used such obviously an enormous amount of space within that red line boundary, as I said, to mitigate against harm to the greenbelt landscape, for SUD, for flood risk, and then obviously for fire risk as well. We need that amount of space to ensure that there aren't any risks to both fire risk and to ensure that the impact on locals is mitigated.
That is, I will repeat it again. You've got landscaping area there, but you have an access road which you are putting in, which has enough space on it for a lot more units to go in there. without interfering with the landscaping that you're putting in.
Correct. There will be no extra units. It's 50 megawatt site. Yeah, sorry, we're option plan has terms with the landowner for a lease. So we're not scheduled for anything more than that.
Councillor Parson?
Yeah, just a quick observation. I mean, obviously, take Councillor David's point, but I mean, you can't have a site where you're designing in a controlled burn facility if you're actually filling it up completely. You've got to have you've got to allow the burn, if it comes to the worst case, to be able to go without damaging it, multiplying as it were. So personally can't see the problem with that. I think you need that space, yeah.
Any question to our speakers?
I forgot the question.
Is that the case?
No, perfect. Yeah. So we there's so many different requirements we need for fire safety. There's a whole list of them. We have a whole technical team working on those sorts of things to ensure that we are we follow the various rules and regulations within that. So each container is with just over 3 meters apart from each other. We need those to avoid any additional damage in equipment if there was to be a fire or any smoke insulation, anything like that issues. So we have that spacing as a requirement. So you're completely right. We don't have space to fit in any more additional containers, landscaping, and with those requirements for safety. That's it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that timely reminder, Chair.
Just a few questions, if you don't mind. The site selection report we know was undertaken, and it concludes that this is the preferred site. But what other site did you consider?
Yeah, sure. So our planners obviously conducted the site selection report. They've looked at various different locations where they follow follow various categories such as level terrain, enclosed by hedgerows. If the distance to the point of connection is very important, obviously. So they've done that to find out if there are any alternatives available. From that report, no sites within brownfield land in the area were suitable. But that's as much as I have tonight. If there's any further information that you require, I can send that back in.
Yeah, just honestly, with respect, you didn't tell me you don't have no brownfield sites, but you didn't tell me what other sites were considered.
Sure. So they would looked at the area that we're looking the surrounding area, but they've come back with nothing that fits those requirements, such as close proximity to point of connection, and obviously follow an initial assessment of the various things we look at, such as flood risk, that are quite obvious on databases.
So I guess what I'm trying to understand is why here? Why this site?
Yes.
Out of the whole of the UK, why does it need to be on Greenbelt in North Warwickshire?
Just due to space. So there's different there's a whole list of characteristics for a site that we would look at for battery and even solar. So when you narrow those down and you factor in the point of connection, close proximity, whether it's because obviously we prefer it to not be in a college in greenfield sites, but when you look at all these different factors such as point of connection, flood risk, drainage, ecological impacts as well, with all the surveys that we've done, landscape, it does reduce that. So we've looked at Bodymore, and that's come up as a viable option from those parameters we look at.
Well, I get that. But surely there are other sites in the UK that would meet your criteria.
Yeah, we've had those as other projects, you see, yeah. So we've looked at that. We have an origination team within our company that look at all those different parameters to ensure that it's most viable, both in a commercial sense, but then also on an environmental sense, with all the different reports that we do as well, because obviously we factor those in. If we were to get significant results, adverse results within each of those reports, that would then alter whether we proceed with the project or not. For this project, we haven't received those, hence why we're looking to go forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The report tells me that you had a pre-application consultation with Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service and were able to overcome their concerns. What the concerns they raised with you?
With the obviously I don't know off the top of my head what their precise concerns were. We've got anything that they were they raised, we conditioned following that. But
And that's really what concerns me. You know, I'd like to know what was in their mind leading to those conditions, because in the Western world, they feel like they're a bit boilerplate conditions rather than anything else. I was wanting to understand what were the scenarios you'd all be planning against. So I can imagine some, but I'm happy for your answer. And my final question, I'll turn this back on to make sure I get it right. Have you used any nickel, cobalt, manganese technology in your application?
not that I'm aware of. These are lithium iron phosphate batteries. I'm not aware of those materials now.
Well, I think they're all lithium, aren't they? But some with nickel, manganese, cobalt technology. That's what caused the fire earlier this week, isn't it?
I'm not aware of that, I'm afraid. I don't know that any of those materials are included. All I know is that it's lithium iron phosphate. So I can refer to our technical team and provide further information. But as far as I'm aware, those materials are.
Okay, thank you very much. I would appreciate it.
Sure.
Any other questions, Mark? If you think we've given our speaker a fair answer tonight. Members, who'd like to start the conversation? Oh, there we go. What a surprise, Councillor Watson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, I heard the answers from the speaker, and to be fair, we've heard them before. And I do understand. I understand the need for renewable energy. I understand it. And I think it's similar to earlier conversations that we've had earlier this evening. In the appropriate place, I'm supportive. So that and it's all one which didn't have residential close by, which was kind of away from kind of communities, etc. I understand it. And it's interesting that Mr. Collinson has put this up that I wanted to refer to. So the site we're talking about is the little top red one there. You can see the other three sites within the Firthworth ward that are looking at where they're. So your point is why here? And I think it's because it's convenient. I think it's because it's convenient. I think it's because it fits kind of a cheaper model of where to put it. I think a couple of things that
Before you go on, I'm slightly concerned there were two Councillor Watsons. What was quite
you can never have too many. I'm not going to believe that.
You're not getting two votes.
No, absolutely.
What a night. We've got one in stereos, probably.
We are now back to only one Councillor Watson by the sound of it. How's that more? Councillor Watson's or Councillors Watson?
And we've got two citizens, much worse.
Do we think we can bear with two Councillors Watson?
So if I turn that off, does that help? No.
Who's still got their microphones on?
Struggle on. Go for it, Councillors Watson.
Here we go. I was going to say, so you can see actually there's a cumulative impact of these within one wound, Kirkworth ward. And some might say, well, practically, yeah, I understand it, it's close to the grid or, national grid, etc. So I think what the report doesn't cover, though, and where I've got a concern, is that cumulative impact. And the other one that the report does refer to, but again, we haven't really covered off, is noise. These sites do generate noise. Not only the battery storage sites, the batteries themselves, the inverters, the kind of things that are connected to the grid, etc., the substations, all create noise. And within this particular site, there are houses that are literally about 150 metres away that are just around, and they're across open fields, and it's not. And I know we talked about like 4 metre high attenuation fencing to kind of minimise that. But I do have a concern from a perspective that the report's not really picking up on that cumulative landscape issues with these types of developments. And this is literally just away from the HS2 site as well. So I do have a massive concern. And the other concern, and I was talking about far be it for me to worry about wildlife. I come from London. What do I know about wildlife?
Just from the east end, it's wild enough there.
It's wild enough there, it's true. Just across the road from Bodymore Heath, literally is the County Council Water Park. And I think when we did the site visit, we saw many of the kind of birds migrating, and they do fly across that specific area. Now, I'm no expert, but I know large magnetic fields don't do wildlife a particularly lot of good.
Even the shortest flight was ducks when the birds came over.
So I do have a concern that we've not really looked at that, and I will go back to it. Mr. Collinson will frown at me because when we talk about renewables and whilst we understand the need of it, paragraph 160 says, when located in the Greenbelt, elements of many renewable energy projects will comprise inappropriate development. In such cases, developers will need to demonstrate very special circumstances if the projects are to proceed. Such very special circumstances may include the wider environmental benefits associated with increased production of energy from renewable sources. Well, as you can see, personally, I think we've done our bit. We've got enough of these sites. So I would like to propose, Mr. Chair, if I could, a deferment whilst we can have answers to those questions around noise, around cumulative impact, and the other questions that you asked about, what technology is going to be used, and what are the concerns from the fire and rescue services. Thank you.
Members, any other comments, proposals?
Yeah, if that could include plan, what is going to be done during the construction phases of it to protect against the fire risk.
Anything else, members? Councillor Parsons?
Yes, I do appreciate that there does seem a bit of a proliferation here. But actually, to be honest, I don't think any of us live very far away from a renewable energy project at the moment. They are popping up all over the place. And one of the reasons they're popping up all over the place is the need. It's there. You know, we talk about global warming. Yes, I've been following stories for quite some time now, and more today, which talk about the breakdown of the North Atlantic current systems, which are actually breaking up because of desalination, because of the melting of the ice caps and the various glaciers and all the rest of it. Yes, and what's the possible ramifications of that? It's an 11-degree drop of temperature for the areas in the North Atlantic. You know, very harsh winters, possibly very much less rainfall, because actually cold air doesn't hold as much water and all the rest of it. These things are real. I do, yes, I don't like to wax too lyrical about it, but I do like to think that my grandchildren might have a future, might have a happy and enjoyable future as I have had. And I think we do have to consider these things. I think we should be looking perhaps far more at global, at tidal schemes and the like. But I mean, we're here, we're in the Midlands, and this is what we get. And I do think we, as I say, yes, there are proximities to houses, and that's right. But I honestly do not think that any of us live far away from a renewable energy site at the moment. And I think we have to consider that we want the lights on, we want our heating provided, we want to continue the relatively high energy way of life that we live. And this is one of the costs of it. Thank you.
No, I do appreciate members will all wish to make their views on green energy known, but if I can ask you to stick to the subject, that would be.
David Attenborough got here.
Watson, is this something new?
It's in response to Councillor Parsons.
Is it?
And it will be brief. It will be
Only
brief.
one, Councillor Watson.
And whilst I fully understand, and I do appreciate the global warming, and to my mind, if we were really taking it seriously, these things would happen much quicker. But the fact is, this will be built, this will be put in place, and it will not make a iota bit of difference because it won't be connected to the grid for a significant period of time. So I fully appreciate Councillor Parsons' point, but the reality is, actually, all of these ones we get planning consent and not going to make any difference in the foreseeable future, or very little.
Sticking to the point and being brief and all the rest of it. Councillor Stewart?
No, it was just trying to point that Councillor Watson made the point about food security. Energy security is just And, you know, and I totally take the point of how do these things come on stream, but they do take, there's a certain amount of time, and a certain time lag, which we're trying to address right now. And without moving forward on these things, we are going to be disproportionately affected because we have land. You know, that isn't presently got residential land on it. It's more likely to be in North Warwick than it's going to be in the centre of Birmingham. So that's one of the reasons why we are receiving these applications more than you might think. So why would we be distorted? That's for the very reason. I'd just like to make sure that you weren't expressing concern about HS2 with their close proximity to this and any potential damage that might cause.
Well, no, well done. That's the greatest stretch away from the subject I've heard tonight. So top marks for Ken. Members, in the very best low tradition, I will say this only once. It is perfectly reasonable to ask questions on safety. The use of green technology is pretty much something that has been decided by government. It's not for us to stray into that. Questions on safety, questions on siting and adherence to policy is perfectly within the purview of what we should be doing. But I really don't think we should be going into too much detail on government. What is the proper subject to government policy? However concerning it may be, however much you wish to support it. But there are times and places for this conversation. Now, this application has been proposed and seconded for deferment. Are there any other recommendations? In which I see all those in favour of deferring for the reasons outlined by Councillor Watson. And any against? Thank you very much. That's deferred, and we'll look to bring that to a future meeting of the board.